Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're opening up a file that, on the surface, it looks like a pretty straightforward miracle story.
Right. The kind we've all sort of heard before.
Exactly. Someone's sick, a healer shows up, they get better, and, well, that's the end. But the documents we're looking at today, they paint a picture that is so much more complex. I mean, it gets dark fast.
It really does.
Yeah.
This is one of those narratives that if you just read it quickly, you completely miss that this is a major turning point. I
Yeah.
mean, a massive historical conflict is kicking off right here.
A conflict that starts with, what, a guy picking up his bedroll?
Yeah, it starts with an act of mercy and it ends with a credible death threat. This is the moment where that friction between Jesus and the religious establishment, it catches fire.
Okay, so let's dive into it. We're in John chapter 5. And to really set the stage for you listening, we need to get our bearings. We're not just in some generic Bible times setting.
No, this is very specific.
We're in Jerusalem, 1st century, and it's a festival, which means the city is it's packed. It's overflowing with people, pilgrims, all the noise and chaos that comes with that. And we're zooming in on one specific spot, the Sheep Gate.
And I think it's really important we get the right picture of this place. This isn't some, quaint, scenic entrance to the city.
No stained glass window image here.
Not at all. The sheep gate is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the service entrance for the temple. This is where the livestock, the animals for sacrifice, are brought in. So you have to imagine it's busy, it's probably smelly.
Oh, for sure. Wet wool, manure, the crowds. It's a gritty, functional place.
Totally. And right next to this gate, there's a pool. The text calls it Bethesda, though you might see Bethesda in some manuscripts. So this isn't like a little decorative fountain.
No, and this is where the research notes get really interesting. For a long time, scholars thought maybe John had embellished this part.
Right, because he mentions 5 covered colonnades, these porticos. It sounded a bit too grand, maybe mythological.
But then they found it.
They did. In the late 19th century, archaeologists actually excavated it. And it's this massive, deep, double pool complex surrounded by these 5 porches, exactly as the text describes.
And in the 1st century, these porches, these covered areas, they're essentially an overflow ward for the most desperate people in the city.
That's the perfect way to put it. The text says a great number of disabled people were there. The blind, the lame, the paralyzed. And they're not just hanging out.
No, they are waiting. They are all intensely focused on one thing. And this is the part that, to me, it feels more like local folklore than theology. They're waiting for the water to move.
Yeah, and you can't understand the tension of this scene without getting this part. There was this popular belief, and some of the ancient manuscripts actually add a verse to explain it, that every so often an angel would come down and stir the water.
And the rule is just, it was brutal.
Unbelievably so. The first person to get into the pool after it rippled, it would be healed.
It's a lottery system for miracles.
It's so much worse than a lottery. In a lottery, at least everyone has a mathematical chance, right? Here, it's a physical competition.
Among the people least able to compete physically.
Exactly. It's the most vulnerable people in society, pitted against each other in a desperate scramble. Imagine the atmosphere. Hundreds of people, maybe in chronic pain, all just staring at the surface of that water, day in, day out.
A leaf falls in and makes a ripple.
Instant adrenaline spike. Mad dash. It's survival of the fittest applied to the weakest. It is a profoundly hopeless and competitive place, not a community of support.
And that is the backdrop. In that scene of desperation, we meet our main character. We don't get his name, but we do get his most important statistic. And the number is just, it's staggering. He's been an invalid for 38 years.
28 years.
I really want to just pause on that number because it's so easy for us to just read that and move on. 38 years is a lifetime.
It is.
I mean, think about that today. If someone got sick in the late 1980s, they would still be in that same condition right now. They would have missed the entire digital revolution, smartphones, the internet, huge geopolitical shifts. Their world just stopped.
And you have to factor in the life expectancy back then.
Right.
If you made it to 50, you were doing pretty well. So for this man, this condition, this paralysis, it isn't just a part of his life. It is his life. He probably can't even remember a time before the mat.
So his whole identity, his whole world is built around being the sick guy at the pool. He's an institution there.
For sure. Everyone knows him. Which brings us to the encounter itself. Jesus walks into this chaotic, desperate scene. He singles out this one man from the whole crowd. He finds out he's been there for a long time. And then he asks a question that, well, honestly, it sounds almost insulting.
It really does. He asks, do you want to get well?
Do you want to get well?
I mean, can you imagine walking into a hospital, finding someone who's been there for decades, and asking, so, hey, you actually want to leave? I feel like I'd get yelled at the very least. Why does he ask something that seems so painfully obvious?
It seems obvious, but I think it's an incredibly deep psychological probe. You have to try and get your head around what 38 years of that life does to a person. That illness, as horrible as it is, has become a strange kind of comfort zone.
It's what he knows.
It's the only thing he knows. Being the sick man has become his job. That's how he begs. That's how he survives. It's his entire social standing.
So you're saying there's actually a cost to getting better for
A
him?
huge cost. If he gets healed, what happens? He loses his excuse. He loses his income from begging. He has to get a job. He has to re-enter society. He has to take on responsibility for his own life. So Jesus is basically asking, are you truly ready to give up the life you know? This life of dependency for a new life of responsibility. He's cutting right through the victimhood to check the man's will.
Wow. That completely changes the tone of the question, doesn't it? It's not about his physical desire to walk. It's about his mental readiness to live.
Exactly. It's about mindset.
And look at the man's answer. It's so telling. He doesn't say yes. He doesn't say, of course.
No. He starts making excuses.
Mm-hmm.
He explains the logistics of his failure.
Sir, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. He's completely fixated on the method.
Completely. In his mind, healing comes from one place, the water. And the only way to get to the water is to have a helper. He doesn't have a helper, so he's stuck. He's just presenting Jesus with the mechanics of his hopelessness.
He's basically saying, I want to get well, but the system is rigged against me.
Right. While I'm trying to get in, someone else always beats me to it. It's a statement of complete despair. He doesn't see Jesus as a potential healer. He just sees another person, maybe someone who could, give him a shove into the pool next time the water moves.
He has zero expectation of a miracle from this conversation.
Zero. Which is so interesting because in so many other healing stories, Jesus says something like, your faith has made you well. But this guy has no faith. He doesn't know who Jesus is. He's just complaining about the system.
So this healing isn't prompted by the man's belief at all.
Not in the slightest.
Yeah.
This is what you'd call a sovereign act of grace.
Yeah.
Jesus just initiates it. He doesn't wait for the man to figure it out. And he does it by completely sidestepping the whole superstition. He ignores the pool. He ignores the angel legend. He ignores the whole first one in rule. He just gives a direct command.
Get up, pick up your mat and walk.
3 simple, powerful imperatives. Get up, pick up, walk. He doesn't help him up. He doesn't pray over him. He speaks directly to the man's body in his will.
And the result is immediate. The text is very clear. At once, the man was cured.
And can we just stop and think about the biology of that for a second? This isn't just about pain disappearing. Muscles that haven't held any weight for almost 4 decades, muscles that would be atrophied, withered. They're instantly infused with mass and strength.
The neural pathways just firing again.
Instantly reconnecting. Tendons that would be tight and brittle suddenly have elasticity. This isn't just healing, it's recreation. It's the kind of power that speaks things into existence, now being focused on this one man's legs.
And the proof is the mat. I love that detail. He doesn't just, stumble away. He picks up the very evidence of his sickness and carries it.
The mat is so crucial to the story. For 38 years, he lay on the mat. Other people carried him on the mat. It was the symbol of his paralysis. Now, he is carrying it. The entire power dynamic has flipped. He is now the master of the very thing that defined his helplessness.
So you'd think, okay, roll credits, this is the happy ending, man walks, crowd cheers, it's a great day. But this is exactly where the story takes the sharp, unexpected turn into conflict. Because the author drops one small little detail that changes everything.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath.
And that's the bomb going off.
Okay, let's unpack that, because I think for a lot of us listening today, we hear Sabbath and we think, okay, a day of rest, maybe the stores are closed. But in first century Judea, this was the absolute core of their cultural and religious identity, wasn't it?
It was everything. It wasn't just a day off. It was the sign of the covenant God made with Israel. It's what set them apart from all the pagan nations surrounding them. Keeping the Sabbath holy was, in a very real sense, what made them Jewish.
And to protect that, the religious leaders had built this massive fence of rules around it, the oral law.
A very, very complex legal framework. They had identified 39 main categories of labor that were forbidden on the Sabbath, the melachot. And they were incredibly specific. Things like harvesting, lighting a fire, building.
And crucially for this story,
Carrying a burden from a private domain to a public domain. That was one of the 39 forbidden acts.
so when this newly healed man picks up his bedroll, which is basically his furniture, and walks out into the street,
In the eyes of the Pharisees, yes. He is working. He is transporting goods on the Sabbath. He isn't just enjoying a walk. He is breaking the covenant. And in a strict, literal reading of the Old Testament law, that could even be a capital offense.
so the Jewish leaders, they see this guy walking. And we have to remember, this man was a landmark of misery for nearly 40 years. They would have walked past him countless times on their way to the temple. They know who he is, and they see him on his feet. But their first reaction isn't joy. It's not a miracle, praise be to God.
No, their first reaction is, hey, put that mat down.
It's just, it reveals this terrifying spiritual blindness, doesn't it? They are, by their own interpretation, technically correct. The text says they told him, "It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." But they are so focused on the tree that they can't even see the forest.
They're valuing the ritual over the person, the rule over the restoration. All they see is a broken regulation. They are completely blind to the restored life standing right in front of them.
It's the ultimate showdown between legalism and mercy. And the man's response is just classic. He immediately points the finger at someone else.
He does. You can't really blame him. He's probably still in shock on this incredible adrenaline high from being healed. And suddenly the most powerful men in his world are bearing down on him, accusing him. So what does he do? He says, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'"
Hey, don't blame me. I was just following orders.
Exactly. But there's a logic to it,
Yeah.
He's implying, listen, if some guy has the power to make my legs work after 38 years and he tells me to carry something, I'm going to listen to him over you. He's appealing to a higher authority, the authority of the miracle itself.
That's a pretty solid defense, actually. If someone can override the laws of biology, they probably have the authority to override the bylaws of the Sabbath. But the leaders don't care about that. They just want a name. Who is this fellow?
And the man has no idea because Jesus had already slipped away into the crowd. He didn't perform this miracle for the publicity or the applause. He just did it and vanished.
So for a short time, there's this anonymous healer causing trouble, but the story's not over. A little later, Jesus finds the man again, this time in the temple. And this second conversation is way more intense than the first.
It is. It shifts from the physical to the moral. Jesus says to him, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you."
Okay, let's park there for a minute. Stop sinning. That can sound really harsh, can it? Is Jesus saying this man was paralyzed because of a specific sin he committed? Is this a karmic thing?
It's a really delicate point. We know from other places, like in John chapter 9 with the man born blind, that Jesus flat out rejects the simple one-to-one equation that all sickness is a direct result of a specific sin.
Right, where the disciples ask, who sinned, this man or his parents? And Jesus says, neither.
Exactly. But here, in this specific case, the warning seems to imply there might have been some connection. We don't know what it was. But I think the bigger point is that Jesus is pivoting the man's attention from his physical past to his spiritual future.
Okay, because he warned him about something worse. And I think we have to ask, what on earth could be worse than 38 years of being paralyzed and helpless? That already sounds like the worst case scenario.
Well, if you look at it through the eternal lens that Jesus always uses, the something worse is spiritual death. It's final judgment. It's being eternally separated from God. Jesus is essentially saying, I've just rescued you from a temporary physical prison. Don't use your newfound freedom, your new legs, to walk straight into a permanent spiritual one.
So the physical healing was just the opening act. The main event is the state of his soul. And how does that connect to, our practical daily choices? Stop sinning is a pretty broad command.
I think it's a call to understand that true wellness is holistic. You can have legs that work perfectly, but a soul that is completely corrupt. You can be at the peak of physical fitness, but be spiritually dead. Jesus is calling this man to a total life realignment. He's saying, you've been given this incredible gift, this second chance. Don't go back to the patterns of life that lead to death.
So what does the man do with this warning, with the second chance? Does he fall on his knees and thank him? Does he become a follower?
No. He does the exact opposite. He immediately goes and narcs on Jesus. The text says, the man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who had made him well.
Why? Why would he do that? Is he malicious? Is he trying to get Jesus into trouble, or is he just trying to save his own skin?
I tend to think it's the latter. He seems to be a man who is above all concerned with self-preservation. At the pool, his excuse was, I have no one. Here, his strategy is to shift the blame to Jesus to get the authorities off his back about the Sabbath thing. He's a stark contrast to other people Jesus heals, who often become these bold witnesses for him. This guy just seems to want to avoid any more trouble.
But his report does the opposite. It ignites a firestorm. Now the leaders have a name. The text says, so because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders began to persecute him. And this is where the deep dive really begins. The miracle story is over. We are now in a theological courtroom.
And Jesus is on the stand, so to speak. He's being called to account. And we have to pay super close attention here. The charge is breaking the Sabbath. Now, Jesus could have defended himself in a few ways that were acceptable in Jewish thought.
He could have said, an act of mercy overrides the Sabbath.
Exactly. That was a recognized principle. Pikwach nefesh, saving a life. He could have argued this was a form of that. But he doesn't. He doesn't take the easy way out. He goes straight for the nuclear option.
He says, my Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working.
And that statement is it's an explosion. To get why it's so shocking, you have to understand the Jewish theology of God's relationship to the Sabbath. There's this long-running debate. Does God rest on the Sabbath? I mean, the creation story says he rested on the seventh day. But
the sun still comes up on Saturday, rain still falls, babies are born, people die. The universe doesn't shut down for 24 hours.
Precisely. The rabbis reasoned that if God actually stopped working, if he stopped sustaining the very fabric of existence, everything would collapse into nothingness. So they concluded that God is the one exception. God works on the Sabbath because his work is sustaining life and executing judgment. He has a divine exemption.
So when Jesus says, my Father is working and so I am working, he's not just saying I'm doing good deeds.
Not at all. He is explicitly claiming that same divine exemption for himself. He is putting his own work in the very same category as God the Father's work. He's saying, the reason I can work on the Sabbath is because I am doing what God does. I am sustaining life. I am restoring creation.
And the leaders get it instantly. They don't miss the implication for a second. Verse 18 is maybe the most important turning point in the whole Gospel of John. For this reason, they tried all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God.
The charge just escalated dramatically. It went from a misdemeanor, breaking a Sabbath rule, to a capital crime, blasphemy. In their minds, he wasn't just a rogue teacher anymore. He was a man claiming to be God, and the penalty for that was death.
So now there are two charges on the table, Sabbath breaking and blasphemy. And instead of trying to de-escalate, instead of saying, whoa, you misunderstood, it was a metaphor, Jesus he doubles down.
He more than doubles down. He launches into this incredible, detailed defense that is also an incredible, detailed explanation of his own identity and his relationship with the Father.
It's a monologue of pure authority. And he starts with what sounds like humility, but isn't. The Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing.
Yeah, on first read, that sounds like, oh, I'm just a humble servant. But it's actually a claim of perfect, absolute unity. Think about it like a master artist and an apprentice. The apprentice's whole job is to perfectly replicate what the master does. If the master is painting a portrait and the apprentice starts sculpting a statue, he's not a good apprentice. He's gone rogue.
He's not following the plan.
Exactly. Jesus is saying, I am in perfect sync with the Father. I'm not a rogue agent. I'm not starting my own thing. Every single action I take, every word I say, is a perfect, real-time reflection of the Father's will and action. Then he says it plainly, whatever the Father does, the Son also does.
That is such a sweeping statement. Whatever the Father does, that has to include the biggest things God does.
It does, and Jesus immediately names the two biggest divine prerogatives there are, giving life and executing judgment.
Let's take the life part first. He says, for just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even so the Son gives life to whom he is pleased to give it.
In the Old Testament, raising the dead was God's business, period. You have prophets like Elijah or Elisha who are involved in resurrections, but they're praying to God, asking God to do it. They are the instrument, not the source of the power.
But Jesus is claiming to be the source.
Yes, to whom he is pleased to give it. That is a statement of pure sovereignty. He's saying, I hold the authority over life and death in my own hands.
And then he makes the same claim about judgment. Moreover, the Father judges no one, but has entrusted all judgment to the Son.
This would have just been mind-blowing to his audience. The absolute foundation of their faith was that Yahweh God was the judge of all the earth. Jesus says, actually, the Father has delegated that entire role to me. The gavel is in my hand. The implication is massive. There is no appealing to God the Father over the head of Jesus the Son. He is the court of final appeal.
And that leads directly to what you called the honor clause in the outline, verse 23, that all may honor the Son just as they honor the Father.
This is the core of it, the non-negotiable bottom line. He is demanding equal honor. He's saying you cannot separate your worship of God from your response to him. It's an all-or-nothing package deal.
It's like an ambassador from a king. You can't say, oh, I love and respect the king, I just despise his chosen representative.
You can't. If you spit on the ambassador, you've declared war on the king who sent him. Jesus makes it explicit. Whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. That just dismantles any possibility of seeing Jesus as merely a good teacher or a wise prophet. He is demanding the same worship, the same honor that is due to God Almighty.
Oh, middle ground.
There is no middle ground in this claim. You either worship him as God, or you are, by his own definition, dishonoring God.
Okay, then Jesus shifts his focus a bit. He starts talking about hearing his voice and this idea of crossing over. He says, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life and will not be judged, but has crossed over from death to life.
The tense of the verb there is so important. Is crossed over. It's past tense. It's a completed action.
So he's not saying this is something that will happen to you when you die.
No, he's saying eternal life begins the moment you believe. It's a present tense reality. In that moment of faith, you are transferred out of the column marked death and into the column marked life right now. You don't have to wait until your funeral to find out where you stand. It's a present possession.
That's an incredibly powerful idea. But then he does seem to talk about the future, about a time when the dead will hear his voice. And this part can get a little confusing because it sounds like he's talking about two different kinds of resurrection.
He is. He makes a really careful distinction. First, he talks about a spiritual resurrection that is happening right now. He says, a time is coming and has now come when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live.
And the dead in that sentence means spiritually dead people.
Exactly. People who are physically alive walking around but are alienated from the life of God. When they truly hear the voice of Jesus, when the gospel penetrates their heart and they respond in faith, they come to life. They are spiritually reborn. That is salvation happening in the here and now.
Okay, so that's the first kind. What's the second?
The second is the future, physical resurrection. He says a time is coming when all who are in their graves will hear his voice and come out.
All who are in their graves.
Yes, that's the key. This isn't just for believers. Everyone gets up. He says, those who have done what is good will rise to live, and those who have done what is evil will rise to be condemned.
Okay, wait. Those who have done what is good. That sounds like salvation by good works. I thought just a second ago he said it was about whoever hears my word and believes. So which one is it? Is it believing or is it doing good?
That's a great question, and it's a tension you see throughout the New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
But they aren't contradictory. In the logic of John's gospel, doing good is the inevitable result, the fruit of genuine belief.
So it's not that your good works save you.
No. It's that if you are truly saved, if you have truly crossed over from death to life, your life will begin to produce good works. Your actions will start to align with your new nature. So the final judgment doesn't save you. It reveals what was already true about the state of your heart, as evidenced by the trajectory of your life.
Got it. So Jesus has made these absolutely colossal claims. He's equal with God. He's the source of life. He's the judge of the whole world. But he's in a hostile environment. The leaders are treating this like a legal proceeding. And in a court of law, your own testimony about yourself isn't enough.
Right. And he acknowledges that. He says, if I testify about myself, my testimony is not valid. He means it's not legally sufficient. Jewish law, from the book of Deuteronomy, required the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses to establish a matter. One person's word wasn't enough.
So he says, okay, you want witnesses, I'll give you witnesses. And he calls 4 of them to the stand, metaphorically speaking. Who's witness number 1?
Witness number 1 is John the Baptist,
The man in the desert.
the forerunner. Jesus reminds them, you sent your own people to John, and he testified to the truth. And they did. They had respected John, at least for a while. They were intrigued by him. They sent official delegations out to the Jordan River to ask him point blank, are you the Messiah? And John's consistent answer was, no, I'm not, but I am the one pointing to him.
I love how Jesus describes John here. He says he was a lamp that burned and gave light.
It's a perfect description because it's both a compliment and a limitation. A lamp is not the sun. A lamp is temporary. It's useful in the darkness, but its whole purpose is to point to something else. Jesus is saying, you guys enjoyed the lamp. You liked the excitement of John's revival movement, but you were so fascinated by the lamp that you missed what the light was shining on.
And Jesus says he has testimony that is weightier than John's, so he moves on to witness number 2, his works.
The miracles themselves, the very sign that started this whole argument, the healing of the man at the pool. Jesus basically says, if you don't believe my words, then just look at what I'm doing.
It's pretty hard to argue with a man who was paralyzed for 38 years now, walking around carrying his bed.
It should be impossible. And we know from other parts of the story that even some of the leaders knew this. Nicodemus admitted it. He said, Rabbi, we know you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one could perform the signs you are doing if God were not with him. The works are God's stamp of approval. They are the divine credentials that validate the message.
Okay, so we have John the Baptist, we have the miracles, then Jesus called witness number 3, and it's the biggest one yet, the Father himself.
Right. He says, the Father who sent me has himself testified concerning me.
So how did he do that? Was it a booming voice from heaven?
Well, at Jesus' baptism it was. But here Jesus pivots and turns it into an indictment of the leaders. He says the Father has testified, but then he tells them, you have never heard his voice nor seen his form, nor does his word dwell in you.
That is a brutal thing to say to the religious experts of the nation. These are the men who have dedicated their lives to studying God's word, and he tells them it's not even inside them.
And that leads him directly to his fourth and, in some ways, most devastating witness against them, the Scriptures.
This is the great irony he exposes. In verse 39, he says, you study the Scriptures diligently because you think that in them you possess eternal life.
Just think of that for a second. These men are brilliant scholars. They have the text memorized. They're counting letters. They're debating obscure points of grammar. They sincerely believe that the act of studying the book is what grants them life. They've turned the Bible into a kind of magic talisman.
But Jesus delivers the punchline. These are the very Scriptures that testify about me, yet you refuse to come to me to have life.
It's utterly tragic. They're staring so intently at the signpost that they refuse to walk down the road it's pointing to. The entire narrative of the Hebrew Scriptures, the law, the prophets, the writings, was designed to create a sense of expectation, to point forward to the coming Messiah. And now he's here, standing in front of them, and they're using the book that points to him as a reason to reject him.
They love the map more than the destination.
That's it, exactly. And this allows Jesus to give his final diagnosis of their core problem. Why can't they see it? Is it an intellectual issue? Do they just need one more piece of evidence?
He says no, it's a heart issue, a motivation issue. He tells them, I know you. I know that you do not have the love of God in your hearts.
That just cuts right to the bone. This isn't a debate about theology anymore. It's a diagnosis of their souls. And then he names their idol, human glory.
How can you believe since you accept glory from one another but do not seek the glory that comes from the only God?
Their entire lives are oriented around getting approval from their peers. They're trapped in a religious echo chamber, constantly patting each other on the back. To acknowledge Jesus would mean losing their status, losing their reputation, getting kicked out of the club. They care more about what other rabbis think of them than what God thinks of them. And because of that, Jesus says faith is impossible.
He says, how can you believe? It's not a real question. The answer is you can't. Not as long as your ego and your reputation are sitting on the throne of your heart.
And then comes the final move, the checkmate. He brings up the one figure they claim to revere above all others, Moses.
The lawgiver, the founder of their nation, their ultimate hero.
Their hope. Jesus tells them, but do not think I will accuse you before the Father. Your accuser is Moses, on whom your hopes are set.
Wait, how can Moses be their accuser? They see themselves as the disciples of Moses. They're on the same team.
Jesus completely flips the script on them. He says, if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me.
That is an unbelievable claim. He's saying the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible that they cherish, is fundamentally about him.
Yes, in prophecy, in type, in shadow, all through the writings of Moses. The promise of a descendant who would crush the serpent's head in Genesis, the Passover lamb in Exodus whose blood saves from death, the high priest, the tabernacle, the bronze serpent lifted up in the desert, the promise in Deuteronomy of a prophet like Moses who they must listen to. He's saying all of those things were sketches, previews, pointing to him as the final reality.
So his argument is, if you really understood and believed the books you study so diligently, you would look at me and see the fulfillment of everything you've been waiting for.
Precisely. And the devastating conclusion is, because you reject me, You're proving that you don't actually believe Moses either. You're
Right.
just using his words as a religious prop. But since you do not believe what he wrote, how are you going to believe what I say? He calls their bluff and exposes them as hypocrites according to their own standards.
And that's pretty much where this intense confrontation leaves us. He has taken apart their arguments, he's exposed the motives of their hearts, and he has unequivocally claimed to be equal with God.
It's an incredible journey. We started at a dirty pool full of superstitious and desperate people, and we've ended up in the throne room of the universe discussing who has the right to give life and judge the world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring it home. What does all this mean for us today? We're not first-century religious leaders. Most of us aren't lying by a pool hoping for a miracle. But it feels like there are some really powerful applications here.
I think there are two massive takeaways that just jump out. The first one goes all the way back to the man with the mat.
The 38-year invalid.
Right. That first question Jesus asked him, do you want to get well? I think that question just echoes down to all of us. Are there areas in our own lives where we've gotten comfortable in our dysfunction? Do we have our own set of excuses? I don't have anyone to help me. The system is rigged. It's been this way for too long, that are keeping us from hearing that simple command from Jesus to get up.
We can get so attached to our own narrative of victimhood, he can feel safe. Getting up and walking means taking a risk. It means a new life with new responsibilities. It means leaving the familiarity of the porch and stepping out into the world.
It absolutely does. And the second big takeaway is that warning to religious people, to any of us who are spiritual seekers. It's the danger of becoming like the Pharisees. You can study the Bible your whole life, you can know all the right theological terms, you can go to church every week, and you can still completely miss Jesus.
You can mistake the menu for the meal.
That's a perfect way to put it. The whole point of the book, the history, the rituals, it's all meant to lead us into a relationship with a person. And if our spiritual knowledge doesn't result in us loving and honoring the Son, then we've missed the entire point. We're just scrutinizing the signpost and refusing to meet the one it's pointing to.
And honoring the Son, as Jesus defined it here, means honoring him as God, not just a good man, not just an inspiring historical figure, but as the one who has the authority to give life and the authority to judge.
The one whose voice has the power to wake the dead.
That's a powerful place to end. The same voice that spoke to that man who was paralyzed for 38 years is the voice that speaks to us through these words today. And it's the same voice that will one day call everyone from the grave. The question is, are we truly hearing it now?
Whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. That's the promise on the table.
Well, there you have it. John chapter 5. A story that's so much more than a miracle. It's a conflict, a courtroom drama, and a profound revelation of who Jesus claims to be. I hope this deep dive has helped you see it in a new and maybe more challenging light.
It's definitely not just a story about a guy getting healed at a pool.
Not even close. Thanks for listening, everyone. Maybe take some time this week to think about what mats you might be holding on to. And maybe it's time to listen to that voice telling you to get up and walk. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.